Welcome back, Pack, and welcome back for another fantasy football mock draft video, this time on a pick number 9. Of course, we're here with the 10-team PPR League on Sleeper, this time on pick 9, almost done with the top 10 picks of the mock draft. Let me know what other content you would like to see on the channel once we get done with this. I'm not really sure if I'll have time or what my plan might be as I'm going back to university, and I'm also working full-time, so we're busy, but that's besides the point. We have some fantasy football mock drafts to do. It is almost here. The draft season is ahead of us. A lot of leagues, of course, going to be drafting this weekend. I have 3 leagues ahead planned for this weekend and going into Monday as well of next week. So really excited to get the drafting underway. As you can see already, we started the draft. I didn't change any picks, actually. These are how it fell, and this is kind of realistic to what I think would happen. Obviously, I've talked about Cooper Kupp probably being in a different position. Maybe you're seeing Justin Jefferson fly in the top 5 picks, especially with the Matthew Stafford injury. Kind of, a lot of people have been starting to sleep a little bit on Cooper Kupp's value, so he is dropping a little bit more than expected, but still obviously in the first round. But it's back to us on pick 9. And Najee Harris is on the board here, and I feel like this is realistic. You'll see Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase go before you a lot. You might get Jamar Chase at pick 9, which I would highly recommend. He's going to have fantastic value in that offense once again. We already know what him and Joe Burrow were able to do as former college teammates. We know they're going to hit on all cylinders. And right here, this is a very fun pick, in my opinion. The 9 and the 10 spot this year are incredible because the value you can get at receiver is insane. Getting Stephon Diggs or Davante Adams, which is almost a guarantee in most leagues in 10-team PPR to have one of those guys, if not both, at the 10 turn. It is a pretty valuable spot to be. So at pick 9, we are going to take Najee Harris. Of course, he's had the Liz Frank injury during the preseason, and that's been talked about a little bit going into the season. And without Ben Roethlisberger, he's not going to get as crazy value as he did last year. These, Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett are both going to have a little bit more mobility and are going to be able to scramble out when needed. So Najee Harris won't be used all the time. But even in the preseason game, he had 4 targets, I believe. 3 targets, but caught all of them. So they're already targeting him in the preseason. That's good news and good signs because he's still an integral part of the team even after his Liz Frank injury. But apparently he's over it, so just something to be aware of. Liz Franks could stick around for a while, so if he messes up his foot again, it could be a reoccurring problem throughout the season. So Najee Harris isn't necessarily a risky first round pick, but it is something to keep an eye out for. Because in terms of workhorse and value, Najee Harris is going to be one of the top 3 in the league because he had an insane workload last year, didn't ever get into much injury worry. This year, obviously, starting with Liz Frank, it's a little concerning. Obviously, he's young, so getting a huge workload right away might have messed things up, but you got to hope not going into the second year here. He's still going to, the offense, obviously, the offensive line isn't as good, and with or without Ben Roethlisberger, we don't know if the team is going to be as good either. So there's some components of this offense that could make the Steelers a little bit worse this year as far as offense goes. But Najee Harris is going to be a big part no matter what. So you can safely pick that. You can go Joe Mixon here as well if you really don't believe in Najee Harris. Or you can go for the draft strategy of Davante Adams and Stephon Diggs, which will probably drop to you at the 9 spot, depending on what Team 10 picks, if they want Najee and Joe Mixon. So that is the case, though, as Davante Adams and Joe Mixon goes after us the 10 spot. We're going to take Stephon Diggs without question here. In my opinion, could finish as a top 2 receiver this year, barring Kupp has some regression. I mean, most of these guys will have regression. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase coming off of, all 3 of these guys coming off of insane seasons that is really hard to replicate. Davante Adams, of course, is always going to be up there, but we haven't seen him with Derek Carr yet. So we don't know as far as like how good they're going to be this year going into things. But it is something to still be excited about if you're picking Davante Adams near the end of the draft. But in the second round after us goes DeAndre Swift, Travis Kelce, Nick Chubb, Deebo Samuel, Alvin Kamara, CeeDee Lamb, Saquon Barkley, and Aaron Jones. Into the third round, Tyreek Hill, Javonte Williams, Mark Andrews, Josh Allen, the first quarterback off the board in round 3. Of course, if Mark Andrews made it to us in round 3 at pick 3-9, I would have almost always picked him here. I just think he, as a value at tight end, is a week-winning tight end for not a terribly different spot than when you draft someone like A.J. Brown or Michael Pittman, who could have similar values as a receiver, but there's more receiver depth, obviously, than there is tight end. So if Mark Andrews makes it to the end of the third or the middle of the third, I think about that constantly, even though I'm much more in favor of a late tight end guy. I still really like Mark Andrews, and I'm coming around to Kyle Pitts as well because he is the only weapon the Atlanta Falcons will have, and getting him in the 4th round could be a steal because he could finish as one of the top 3 tight ends easily this season, barring on how much work he's going to have in that offense. So after Josh Allen goes Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans, and Keenan Allen. Very simple teams, both me and Team 10. And obviously at pick 9, you have to consider reaching for these really late draft picks. When you go on the pick 9 or you go on the turn, you're not up for another, what's the math? We're from here. 18 picks, something like that. I don't know. You're not up for a while. So you might have to reach for guys that you think will go ahead of you that won't come back to you. So you do have to try and find value here at the later rounds, later parts of your draft at pick 9. I would say from pick 7 to pick 10, all kind of those situations where there's a lot of picks in front of you. So you have to make a solid pick if you're going to solidify something. And now here in the 3rd round, we got a decision to make. Could go early Kyle Pitts and tight end in the 3rd round. Could obviously never go on quarterback here because of how much value there is later. So let's take a look. I'll let you know what we got. And for me, it's really only a couple options here. A.J. Brown, obviously at the end of the 3rd, I would say is about where I'd take him. He has been climbing a lot, and for a good reason. He's going to be on a good offense with Jalen Hurts. He is a great receiver as well. He obviously did have some injury problems last year, and as a owner of A.J. Brown last year, he could win you a week, and then he'd be down for a couple of weeks. And, that's always a recurring thing that could happen and be kind of scary. I'm not going to go for Kyle Pitts here. I think it's just too early at the 4-2 or the 3-9. So for me, it's A.J. Brown or James Conner. I am out on Cam Akers because I know he'll have recurring issues this year. Same with Darrell Henderson, but Darrell Henderson's I got him in the 12th round of our mock draft yesterday. So I'd much rather go with a guy in a timeshare that's going to be in the 12th round than a guy in the 3rd round at running back. So Cam Akers is complete out my list, and I don't really want to reach for David Montgomery. As far as wide receiver goes, it's basically just Michael Pittman or A.J. Brown. And that could be what I want to do here is go for A.J. Brown and Michael Pittman and try and just figure out a running back situation in the 5th, but I do not like a whole lot of running backs. So it probably would be A.J. Dillon as our 2nd running back. That's something we have to consider and be confident with if we are going to pass on James Conner here, who we know James Conner wasn't incredibly and hasn't ever been incredibly efficient, but he's going to have a very high workload there. He's basically the only back that the Cardinals will have. And with DeAndre Hopkins out for the first 6 weeks, maybe James Conner gets the ball a little bit more and could put up similar numbers. But I think I'm just going to go for overall value here in what I see fit, and especially in a PPR league, it's going to be the first time I'm going to go with one running back in the beginning of my drafts. In front of me goes Patrick Mahomes and Kyle Pitts. So James Conner is still staring at us back at the 4-2. So now Team 10 has a quarterback and tight end, so that's something to keep in mind towards the later stages of the draft. If I want to go quarterback or tight end, I can save that for the pick after on my turn because I know Team 10 won't take another quarterback or tight end at least until the very end. So that's something to keep in mind. But now it is a decision for James Conner or Michael Pittman, which has been the case scenario. T. Higgins, I am fine with that. This is not good. 12 hours ago doesn't appear to be practicing, which is, when you have a depth of wide receivers like this with Tyler Boyd, who is going to show up as well. T. Higgins, of course, coming off a very strong year as the number 2 in the offense. Can that repeat? I don't know. It's tough for a 4th round receiver to put your eggs in a backup receiver. I mean, you're putting all of your money on what would be our wide receiver 3, but a lot of people's wide receivers 2. As a wide receiver 2, instead of getting someone like Michael Pittman, who is the solidified absolute wide receiver 1 on this team with Matt Ryan, who's going to target him a lot. So I think it's almost always just going to be Michael Pittman here. James Conner would be fine, but I'm going to try a little bit different strategy, let running back fall a little bit, and see what we might have to reach for in the later rounds. So after us, we have 3 receivers. Love them, locked in. Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, and Michael Pittman. After us goes George Kittle, Cam Akers, James Conner, Justin Herbert, the 2nd or 3rd quarterback off the board. Terry McLaurin, David Montgomery, DJ Moore, Travis Etienne. And this is probably that area where we would have seen Pittman go. And this is what I was talking about. You have to reach for the guys at that turn pick because there's so many picks in front of you. So you have to make sure you get the value of the draft that you want, even if ADP might not say so. So that's why I grabbed Michael Pittman there. I still think it's a good value. And Najee Harris is a solidified workhorse running back, so we just kind of need to pair him with a decent pass-catching running back or someone that's going to get a good workload throughout the year as our running back too. And I kind of wish Travis Etienne made it back to us for that case, or Breece Hall even, who is still going to be in a questionable timeshare, but is the more upside of a player in that timeshare. Darren Waller in the 5th round. Lamar Jackson goes early in the 5th. Same with Joe Burrow, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, and Jalen Waddle as well for the receivers that go. And now we have some interesting choices. So there's a lot of great wide receivers still. Cortland Sutton, Jared Jeudy, Mike Williams, all kind of staring at me. Oh, man, does Josh Jacobs just not look like a good idea this year? I mean, yes, they did drop Kenyon Drake, but they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Clearly, they don't believe in him. They drafted Zamir White as well, and Brandon Bolden, who is going off into that offense with Josh McDaniel, who has the Patriots offense, who's already worked with Brandon Bolden. So, Brandon Bolden's going to have a role. And I just don't like Josh Jacobs in the 5th round. It's just a gross pick. So for me, it's Antonio Gibson and A.J. Dillon, and I might have to reach for A.J. Dillon because of that situation there, but I don't really like anything else, and I'm now considering if I should go for a 4th receiver before we get other players because I just don't like the running backs currently situated in the room right now. Elijah Mitchell is an interesting thing because I got him last year. He was all right, and his ADP is in an interesting spot, but they also just got rid of Trey Sermon, so that kind of clears up the backfield a little bit, barring Elijah Mitchell is healthy this year, and it looks like he's returned to practice. We don't know what his strategy is going to be or what the 49ers are going to be. We know they're going to run so many running backs into the floor, so it's a tough decision, and this is what happens when you go early wide receivers. There's so many good receivers later in the draft. That's why I always hedge against it and try and go running backs early, at least 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds. So in this case, probably James Conner instead of A.J. Brown or Michael Pittman. In that case, it would have been kind of in a much better situation here, I think. But now we're looking at Josh Jacobs, and we're like, I don't really want you. I definitely don't want J.K. Dobbins. Antonio Gibson, someone I got last video, obviously with the news of Brian Robinson, who is very quickly recovering, and very nice to see and very happy for him. It's still going to be Antonio Gibson mainly for at least the first few weeks, and we might see Brian Robinson kind of edge himself back into the team here. But A.J. Dillon is kind of my main guy if I were to go. And in front of me, it looks like running backs might tend to drop a little bit. And it's rough because I kind of do want a 4th receiver here, but it's a terrible idea because you're only going to start 2 receivers in the main league and 1 flex spot. So you're just getting a backup receiver. There's not a real need to do that right now. With how much value we already have at receiver, we're not taking any of those 3 outs, barring they don't get injured. So it's definitely going to be running back here. I don't really like Dalton Schultz. I don't like T.J. Hawkinson really that much. I just don't like a lot of these mid-round tight ends. I'd rather go a lot later. Dalton Schultz could be great. I mean, he's going to have high value in that offense where he could be the 2 for a while until Michael Gallup is back. He could be the main target for Dak. So Dalton Schultz is actually an interesting idea here, considering Kyle Pitts, though, is in front of us. I'm just going to go... Oh, it doesn't feel good. I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs as our running back, too. We can always draft a couple more running backs if Josh Jacobs ends up not looking proficient. But as of right now, the Raiders did drop Kenyon Drake. Like, it should be Josh Jacobs getting a majority of the work going into his 4th year on the season. He still had some decent enough fantasy finishes to warrant taking him in the 5th round. But this is a dead zone for a reason. Josh Jacobs could not return value if Brandon Bolden starts to be a pass-catching running back, or if Zamir White takes goal line. Like, there's a lot of things here that could change the workload of Josh Jacobs, and I just want to check what this means. I was just reading along. It looks like it said he was starting, which, I was like, well, that could be a case scenario. But back to us on the pick. Team 10 going crazy with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. That's a Denver fan right there if I've ever seen one. And trust me, I've seen one. I am one. But now we have an idea. Do we go for Kyler Murray? Because Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Russell Wilson, I would assume all are not coming back to us. There's only 4 teams ahead of us that need a quarterback. But you have to just think with the value on the board that on one of their 2 picks all the way on the way back, they're going to take a quarterback. So this would be a spot where I'd have to consider going for a quarterback like these top tier rushing quarterbacks that I really like, or if I just wait on quarterback a little bit later. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take A.J. Dillon here. It gives me a little bit of safety. I know he's going to be on the field an insane amount. Elijah Mitchell, who I'm starting to come around on a little bit, was also in consideration right there. But like I said, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts both gone, and I expect Russell Wilson to follow here. He's not there, so that could be good news, actually, for us as we come around to our pick. Kyler Murray, Mike Williams, J.K. Dobbins, Dalton Schultz, Brandon Cooks, Chris Godwin, and Allen Robinson. Going into the 7th round, I like this draft over here so far. It's a lot of craziness. Tyreek Hill and Allen Robinson is your only 2 receivers, but Jalen Hurts at the 7th spot is great. Marquise Brown, Michael Thomas, Antonio Gibson, Amari Cooper, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Darnell Mooney. And back to us, we have 3 running backs and 3 receivers. And because we have 3 of each, this kind of gives us an option to look for a future pick. And it's tough because I obviously love Chase Edmonds. I've already talked about him enough. Dameon Pierce. This would be a spot, actually, I know and seen Dameon Pierce can go and will go because you're getting a solidified starter on not a great team, but it is a solidified starter. But I still think, there's a couple guys in front of him that could be better values for right now. Chase Edmonds especially, who I might be targeting hopefully on the 9-9. I think Dameon Pierce might still be there. Same with maybe James Cook or Ramondre Stevenson, who I'm okay with as my 4th running back on the team. So I'm just going to look for value here. And right now, that value is situated with Juju Smith-Schuster. He is the #1 receiver on the Kansas City offense. He's finally back after his knee, shoulder, whatever injuries he's been having. But if he's the top receiver and he is healthy, you can only imagine what kind of a season he will have with Patrick Mahomes. So you got to expect good things out of Juju. And as our 4th receiver, if he doesn't pan out, he doesn't pan out. But, I mean, realistically, he's on a Kansas City offense where he should pan out. So Cordell Patterson, Adam Thielen go after us. 3 running backs, 4 receivers. We could take Russell Wilson here, someone in the 8th round I would absolutely love, and it makes our quarterback decision a lot easier because, I'm cool with Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Stafford even so, and Kirk Cousins, like I said, much later in the draft. But Russell Wilson, for me, kind of marks that end of the elite, and I think Russell Wilson could finish as a top 3 fantasy quarterback this season. So I'm going to take Russ here at the 8-2, just solidifying that quarterback spot for the rest of the draft, and I don't have to worry about that. And the reason I went Juju first and Russell Wilson second is because I know Patrick Mahomes was already picked from Team 10, so they're not going to take a quarterback on their way back. And Tom Brady, Dak Prescott both go, so Russ obviously would never have made it to me in the first place. He would have been gone around here, and maybe would have been Dak Prescott back to us in this situation, which is all right. But I'm very confident with Russell Wilson and expect him to have good upside. And right now, our draft, our receivers are great. Running backs is scary for me. This draft is a tough one, and showcases my first pick 9 mock draft because this is a tough pick. The ending picks, I said there's a lot of value here, but you do have to reach a lot for that value. So you have to make some tough decisions on players that you might not enjoy, like Josh Jacobs in that 5th round. But if he's a starter, if he's a workhorse, he'll be just fine in our running back room. This is definitely where we want to take a running back, though. And some good news ahead of us is I could take 2 running backs I really like here. And suddenly my running backs are looking a lot safer and a lot more upside. So after Russell Wilson, though, in the 8th round, Gabriel Davis, Rashad Bateman, Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Hopkins, who I would also suggest maybe even with the 7-9 pick, maybe reaching for DeAndre Hopkins because, there's a lot of great receivers. Of course, Adam Thielen, Gabriel Davis, Rashad Bateman, all in front of him as far as ADP goes, and all 3 receivers I would very much enjoy on my team. But DeAndre Hopkins could come back after 6 weeks, and if you don't need him to start, which we clearly don't with Michael Pittman, A.J. Brown, and Stephon Diggs, you know that DeAndre Hopkins is going to come back and be a good receiver 1. So that's a lock-in. You just have to skip some time. Meanwhile, Gabriel Davis is a wide receiver 2 that you're hoping for upside. Same with Thielen, wide receiver 2, hoping for touchdowns. Rashad Bateman is one I would have also suggested. He's a wide receiver 1 on that team and one of the only options that Lamar has. So it's definitely in that pick. I would have considered Juju, Rashad Bateman, or DeAndre Hopkins. Gabriel Davis is still a little high for me. He is going to be the second option with Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders, so he is going to get a tremendous amount of work, and he's a big body, and Josh Allen loves to target him in the end zone. So Gabriel Davis could be a game-changing, life-saving receiver in the mid-rounds. But Kareem Hunt, Miles Sanders, Dawson Knox, Devonta Smith. Starting in the 9th, Damian Harris, Tom Brady, Hunter Renfrow, Tony Pollard, TJ Hawkinson, Dak Prescott, Burks, Kenneth Walker, and back to us at the 9-9. And like I said, as far as values goes, I'm not needing Zach Ertz here. I just don't really like him in this late picks. I'd much rather go with a tight end with upside later than old man Zach Ertz on the field. He's 31. He's not that old, and he had good stats last year, but I just don't like him in this spot. especially when there's upside in other positions. Drake London could be the receiver 1 in Atlanta. Missing another practice due to injury, though, is not a good sign. So stay clear from that for a little bit. Elijah Moore on a great offense. Well, let me rephrase that. On the Jets offense with Zach Wilson coming into the second year, he's still going to have some competition for being the wide receiver 1. Garrett Wilson, newly drafted. Corey Davis, who was all right for them last year, but Elijah Moore isn't solidified, and we don't know if that offense is even going to be good again this year. So at wide receiver, I'm pretty much out on everyone but Allen Lazard. That would be my only pick. Probably all the way down to Chris Olave, and then from Chris Olave, it's a bad room that I do not enjoy. So for me here, it's Chase Edmonds and Dameon Pierce, and those are probably going to be my picks because at running back, that's where I see fit value. Dameon Pierce would have gone a lot earlier, so in your mock drafts, you got to account for that Dameon Pierce is going to go a lot earlier. I would say in the 7th, 8th round. Someone drafted him in one of my leagues in the 7th, so you know he's going to start shooting up ahead of guys like Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard. He's going to go a lot higher, so that's something to expect. But I'm just going to go double running back here because I'm solidified in my receiver roles, and running back is the only place I'm a little bit scared of. Devin Singletary is splitting work potential with James Cook. He was pretty efficient in the offense for the Buffalo Bills, which is a great offense, but I just have a lot more value on Chase Edmonds and Dameon Pierce because I know they both could be starters, if not are the starters for their teams. Not the greatest of offenses, but if you have a starting running back in the 9th, 10th turn pick, totally okay with me. A lot of value there, and I just didn't like the receivers. So after Dameon Pierce went Devin Singletary, of course, Tyler Lockett, Allen Lazard, Brandon Ayuk, James Cook, Rashad Penny, Chris Olave, Trey Lance, Zach Ertz, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Freiermuth, Ramondre Stevenson, Christian Kirk, Melvin Gordon, and Mike Gesicki. So, like I said, you got to reach for those guys that you really want. And the 10th round for Dameon Pierce is a steal. The 9th round for Chase Edmonds is a steal. You might have to reach for those guys somewhere up here at the 7 and 8 turn instead of the 9-10 turn and go for a quarterback and a 4th receiver later, which is something you have to make during your draft because you have to see our running backs flying off the board. Like, because there's so many picks ahead of you at that 7-8 turn, are 10 running backs going to go in front of you? Because if they are, Chase Edmonds and Dameon Pierce will be gone. You won't have that option on the way back. And if you don't like your running backs like I didn't with Josh Jacobs and potentially A.J. Dillon, who is a backup, but he's a great player, I'd like a little bit more stability in my running back room. So getting some upside and getting some good running backs later in the draft is something you have to consider. Instead of maybe a top quarterback like Russell Wilson, you go with someone like Tom Brady in the later round, or you go with Kirk Cousins, who I am a fan of, or like Trevor's dumb decision yesterday, Danny Dimes at the end of your draft. But one of our last 2 picks here has to be a tight end, and we can go with kind of anything. We want another receiver here, though, and a receiver with upside potentially would be the best for us. I've always keep talking about Kadarius Toney. He's looked fantastic when he is healthy. The only issue has been him being healthy, but he's currently situated as a wide receiver 1, even though they paid Kenny Galladay a lot of money. So Toney, I absolutely love as a player, would be the choice I'd make here. And Cole Kmet, who I drafted in my league, is who I would take here at tight end because I don't want team at 10 to take another tight end randomly. And I know the wide receiver I'll get will come on the way back with Kadarius Toney. So that ends our draft. I went for upside in the last round of the draft because Kadarius Toney might not play, he might not be healthy, but when he is on the field making plays, he looked incredible and is a very good player and is potentially wide receiver 1 for the New York Giants, which at the 12th pick, I will take a wide receiver 1 in all senses of fashion. Robert Woods is a safer pick there if that's something you're interested in. Treylon Burks obviously going earlier with the upside for Tennessee, but Robert Woods is kind of that safety cushion for Tannehill / whatever their second quarterback position may be during the season. Who knows if they'll keep Tannehill in the whole season or if they'll go with Malik Willis later on. But that is our draft. Russell Wilson at quarterback. At running backs, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, A.J. Dillon, Chase Edmonds, and Dameon Pierce, which, like I said, at the end of that, kind of recovered a little bit there for me for running backs. Chase Edmonds and Dameon Pierce, insane value in the 9-10. And at wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Michael Pittman. I know those guys are going to ball every week for me, so I'm confident in that. Juju Smith-Schuster and Kadarius Toney are kind of more upside options. If they ball, they will ball. Like Juju Smith on Kansas City will go crazy if he is the wide receiver 1. He is going to have an insane amount of targets, and Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback, so we will hit him consistently. Kadarius Toney, working with Danny Dimes, less so the same options, but he himself is an upside player, and I like the talent for him, so that's why I chose to go with him instead of a safety net like Robert Woods or Maybe some upside you can go for someone like Sky Moore there as well, but obviously we have Juju already, so they're not choosing to make that decision this time. But if you have any different picks that you would have done differently, of course, Josh Jacobs in the 5th is my only kind of big question mark here on this draft. I also could have maybe considered Elijah Mitchell there at the 5-9 instead, if I want a little bit more safety. Considering both of those teams, though, have dropped a running back, let me know who you would take, Josh Jacobs or Elijah Mitchell. Also, like I said, let me know what kind of content you want to see in the future, because this series is about to be over. Only one more team left after this one, but y'all have a great rest of your day. I will see you hopefully soon for 10 team, the last and final one. Have a good one.